Where did your passion for sports start, and what made you transition that passion into sports journalism?
So I was born in Jersey, northern Jersey, but we weren't there for too long, moved to Philly. So I was kind of always kind of like a casual fan. My dad's from New York. So that being with northern Jersey kind of was leaning towards New York despite being like so close to Philly. So it was always kind of on in the TV. I didn't really always pay attention to it. It wasn't until I actually moved to Pittsburgh that I did get more into sports. I actually came to Pittsburgh at the time when they were winning their cup. So it was a good time to be in Pittsburgh, pretty good timing. So it was a really good environment, actually. And then my senior year at Pitt, we had a project where it was for an organizational communication class. So it was a pretty broad class for a bunch of majors. And what we had to do was contact people in the field that we were looking to go into. At that point, I still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I was always interested in hockey. So I decided, I should reach out to some hockey people, see if they could give me any good advice, get a little bit more insight into the job and what it entails. So I was actually lucky enough to talk to two Penn's beat reporters for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Matt and Joe. They were really nice. They let me interview them and ask them a bunch of questions. So I learned a lot about the job. I really liked it. I always liked writing. So I kind of thought they went hand in hand. So it was actually a group project we had to present about. And I remember we had a bunch of other people in the group and they went different directions with their interviews. I thought my people were pretty cool that I interviewed. And I remember like one of the first questions that we got after a presentation was like, how did you get these people to talk to you? And I mean, if you just ask, they're really like willing to help you. So that was the first step pretty much.
So we're in the same boat, me and Brendan, because we had a class project where they said, all right, you have to do a podcast or make a website, something like that. So we chose to go the podcast route and look where we are now. But no, like you said,
right.
Where you reach out to people and, how come they answer? How'd you get to talk to them? I realized, and Brendan's probably realized this as well, in the hockey community, everyone wants to talk. They always say to me, it's what I've heard is, when I was younger, somebody helped me and talked to me, so I'm going to pass it on. I think that's great, especially not every sport's like that, but hockey's definitely shown that that's more of the norm.
Right. And I'm definitely like thankful for taking those courses because would I reach out on my own? Probably not. I probably wouldn't even think to do that because again, kind of just, I don't know, you have this idea that they're not going to get back to you or they're too busy or stuff like that. But I mean, I've reached out to multiple people in the field and they all got back to me and it was just the two that I ended up going with.
Next question. Can you shed some light on what a woman has to endure on a daily basis in sports and how men can assist in alleviating some of these issues? Because it's been talked about in the media over the last couple of weeks and for a long time now is, men just saying the dumbest takes and not giving women credit at all for, listen, it's not a women reporter, a women hockey reporter. It's a hockey reporter. And, there's issues that go along with this.
Right. So I think a lot of it is, I understand it's not always coming from an explicit kind of way. A lot of it's very subtle, but there's still a lot of stereotypes involved with it. It's little things like being tested about information or something that you wrote or something like that. And just like them subtly testing you about it, which happens in person, happens in the internet. It doesn't matter. Like it can come from any direction. But I think a matter too is letting your work speak for yourself. But at the same time, people are still going to challenge you. It doesn't matter either gender, but it's not always blatant either. It's like I said, subtle a lot of times. The discrimination isn't always blatant. And then that can kind of funnel into other things like, you don't really know what it's doing to the person on the receiving end. And then it goes into like the imposter syndrome and stuff like that, where then whoever is on the receiving end of it is kind of second guessing themselves and their skills, even though they definitely deserve to be there. But I think in terms of helping, just kind of hold people who are discriminating and harassing accountable. And then I think too, when you do see somebody kind of holding that person accountable, back that person up, like don't attack that person. I've seen this a lot of times where some other men will kind of stand up for a female reporter or whatever the case is, and then another person will come by and attack that person who's standing up, which takes us back a bunch of steps.
Yeah.
Because we finally have somebody who's speaking out. But I just think being aware, like kind of, would you say this to a male reporter? Would you say this to yourself? Like I said, a lot of times I don't think it's really supposed to be explicit in how they talk to someone who's a woman. And I don't think, you can't disagree with a woman either. I just think that your disagreement shouldn't come from a place of gender.
I completely agree with everything you said. Thinking about a career in sports journalism and women in sport, would this issue ever cross your mind of maybe this isn't for me, maybe I shouldn't do this?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so much that goes into putting your work out there because it's really close to you. It's really personal to you. You worked hard on it. And then to see the reaction of it, it doesn't, even if it's somebody who disagrees with your view or anything like that, even if it's not from a place of gender differences, even that's still hurtful. And then to kind of throw the gender thing onto it definitely doesn't help the case. Another thing too is I've seen like men speaking on behalf of women or generally speaking about women, which I, again, advise not to do because just speak for yourself. Like, I don't want any special treatment. I just want to be treated equally. But you do have moments where you doubt it, even if you are a man and your work doesn't take off as well as you think it did. It's always a personal thing.
It's so sad that we actually have to have this conversation. It's just like,
I know.
like we're laughing, but it's because it's stupid. Like, it shouldn't even be a conversation. But well, you're a great writer though, and keep doing what you're doing. But Brennan, the next one.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it all stems from social media. A lot of men have Twitter fingers. I don't think they would say any of the stuff in person, but online they have a little bit of a safety valve, so they try to utilize it. But you mentioned, what you didn't really envision all this stuff and what you'd have to go through. But what message would you give to younger female writers or females who are just interested in sports in general that want to get into the industry but see what's going on and might be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that?
I mean, this is kind of general advice as somebody who puts their work out there. Just don't listen to comments. You do want to interact with people and you do want to support your own points. But I just think at the end of the day, you can't let comments like that deter you from doing what you want to do. If you're passionate about that, you're going to end up there anyway, I think, if you work hard enough. So I think just take advantage of all the opportunities. Again, social media is kind of a good thing because maybe people are just scrolling down to the content. They don't look at the byline or look at your bio. So it's kind of like an extra layer of less judgment, I want to say, in some cases. So that's good. I think social media is obviously a great way to get your name out there and just to take advantage of things like the whole interviewing thing. I don't think you should wait for these opportunities. I wish that I certainly would have done something like this sooner and didn't wait until my senior year
Agreed.
of college to do something like that. So I think it's be more proactive and don't wait for these opportunities to come to you.
Well said. Let's get to some hockey talk now. So the Metropolitan Division is a very, very stacked division, probably one of the toughest divisions in hockey and probably in all of sports. Where do you see the Rangers finishing if they are able to have a full 82-game season?
So I was reflecting last season. I do want to be optimistic about my team. However, I don't think things are going to be that different from last year, kind of taking into account what the other teams in Metro have done. Just looking at the point totals, I mean, last season they ended with 79 points. In any other division, that would be right under the Leafs, same as Calgary, and it would be slightly above the Predators. So that just kind of goes to show you like how difficult the Metro is year in, year out. And then you go and try to assess like the front office changes in the Metro and how that's going to play a role in the standings and stuff like that. But I hope it's going to be slightly better than last year. I don't think last year was a train wreck. I think it could have gone a lot worse than it actually did. So I see a slight increase in what the Rangers did, but I don't think that should digress from any kind of progress that they did make or take away from the moves that they did make.
I like that take. No,
I agree with that.
I'm an Islander fan. I'm an Islander fan. So if you're gonna say they're not gonna be absolute studs, then it's great.
Well, she did say that teams are not going to take a step back, though, which the Islanders will do. So there you go with that. But to follow that up, the Rangers possess young talent, which is just unlike any other in the league right now, at least NHL-ready young talent. And I know you've done a couple of prospect pieces for the Hockey Writers, getting people up to date with what they're doing. which young player do you think will have the biggest impact next season at the NHL level?
I mean, the obvious names, I guess I'm pretty excited for Shesterkin. I'm excited for Lafreniere, those types of people. But I'm also excited to see what Georgiev does. I think it's obviously a different situation for him. He's competing with someone a lot closer to his age. And I don't know how that goalie situation is going to work out yet. So I think, if they do start Igor a majority of the time, I think Georgie's going to really want to make the most of his starts to show that, they could work out a tandem at least, or that he's not forgotten here. They do have a lot of faith in him, obviously. I would like to see him play. And I just think he'd be pretty interesting to watch too. But I like to see Kreider step up too. Fan favorite. He's been there for a while.
Yep.
Don't know what's going on with the captaincy yet. I would like to see him get it. But I think that would be pretty interesting. And of course, just the young kids, really excited to see what they do. I know Hayek didn't have the most impressive first year, so I'm hoping he can kind of step it up. Hopefully the whole defense partner situation kind of fixes itself with some different pairings.
Yep. So you touched on it real quick. If you had to pick between Mika and Chris Kreider, you're going to say that you think Chris Kreider is going to be the captain next year if they go with him?
I am. I just think that because he's been there the longest, I think he shows a lot more to the public. Some leadership qualities. That's not to take away from anything that Zibanejad does, but I think Chris is kind of more out there with his traits.
Yep. Yeah, well, we talked about this last week, and I said the same thing, so I agree with you.
Yeah, so I just would prefer him in a way. I think he's been there for more of like the disappointing seasons and stuff like that. Zibby's seen some disappointment too, but I just think that Chris, he's been there for so long. Not that that's the only reason he should get it, but I would like to see Chris get the C.
But based on Ranger logic, though, if they make him captain, they have to trade him eventually.
Not right away.
Good thing he's not a defenseman, because he'd be out of there a lot sooner.
And he's got a nice contract as well. Last question before we let you go. The NHL wants to play a full 82-game season. Realistically, though, with COVID and everything that's going on financially, do you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible. The first thing that comes to mind is injuries. I know it's kind of interesting after every season to see which injury which player was battling through the whole postseason, and you just have no idea. So I think that's going to be a much bigger problem. And I think too with the Rangers, with the position that they're in, with all the youth, I think having that risk of injury with a lot of young players is a little concerning because of development and reasons like that. But if they were to have a shorter season, obviously that would benefit teams like the Rangers. Like not even just the playoff experience, although that's a part of it, but they would get in the playoffs again. I just think a shorter season would kind of help their confidence in a way too. And again, with that experience, with a team like Carolina, where they did go 4-0 against them in the regular season and then they got eliminated by them, it shows the young kids firsthand that playoffs is so different. You can't take this for granted that you beat them in the regular season. You have to step it up in the postseason. And I think it's one thing to kind of tell the young kids that, and then for them to actually have to go through that. So in terms of that, that's kind of why I would favor a shorter season as well as the risk of injuries. But as a greedy hockey fan, I would like to see a lot more hockey. So it's kind of a toss-up. There's pros and cons to both. But again, the injuries is something that is a little concerning.
Yeah, definitely. If they were to play 82 games, they'd have a lot of back-to-backs. It would probably see a lot more injuries. But for me, the biggest thing is I want hockey season back from October to April. Like right now, once baseball's over, football teams in New York are terrible. I got nothing. And this would be pure hockey season. So if they do a shortened season, you get back to the swing of things with regular hockey season. But if they do a full year, you're back to, okay, you have no hockey from October to December or January. And I'm not okay with that.
I agree. I definitely want as much as I can, but it's a little scary.